They call it a gift, when you give someone your bone marrow. A gift of life. Sounds noble, right? Almost holy. They don't tell you what happens when the person you gave everything to decides it wasn't a gift. Says you used it against them. Says you violated them by talking about it. Says you're the villain in their story. I gave my younger brother my marrow. Now he's suing me for it. A year ago, my phone rang in the middle of a cold Tuesday morning. I was halfway through an energy drink, trying to beat back the hangover from a night of stupid decisions and loud music. It was Mom. She didn't call often, usually only to remind me about birthdays or guilt-trip me about missing Thanksgiving. She was crying. "Daniel's sick," she said. "It's leukemia." You hear things like that, and your brain just stops. I remember staring at the TV screen, some rerun playing, while her voice kept going. She said words like aggressive, hospital, treatment, transplant. All I could think was, he's only 28. Too young to be sick like that. Daniel and I, we were never close in the way you read about. But we were brothers. Shared bunk beds growing up. Fought over video game controllers. Got in trouble together. Got blamed separately. When they said I might be a match, I didn't even hesitate. I flew out the same week. Did the tests. I was a perfect match, full sibling, same HLA type. They called it a miracle. The procedure was brutal. People think it's like donating blood. Nah. They drill into your pelvis, suck out your marrow. You're knocked out for hours, and the pain afterward, like someone took a sledgehammer to your spine and then said, "Thanks, hero." I walked out of that hospital with a bag of painkillers and a limp, and Daniel walked out with a second chance at life. At first, everything was good. He recovered. Slowly. Hair came back. Appetite too. The family called me a saint, a lifesaver. Mom cried every time she saw me. Even Dad gave me that rare look of approval he usually reserved for sports highlights and tax refunds. But then something shifted. Daniel got weird. He stopped calling. He wouldn't meet up. At Christmas, he barely spoke to me. When I asked if something was wrong, he smiled, this thin, tight thing that never reached his eyes, and said, "Nothing. Just tired." I chalked it up to recovery. Maybe he was depressed. Chemo messes with your head. But it kept getting worse. Then came the podcast. A small show, just a local nonprofit raising awareness about bone marrow donations. They asked if I'd share my story. I said yes. I figured maybe my story could help someone else step up. I didn't say Daniel's name. I didn't mention where he lived. I didn't talk about anything private. Just told the story. How it felt. How scary it was. How proud I was to help save someone. My brother. That episode aired 8 months ago. 3 weeks ago, I got served. Daniel is suing me. The suit says I violated his medical privacy. That I exploited a deeply traumatic medical episode for personal gain. That I publicly weaponized his suffering. His lawyer even cited emotional distress, reputational harm, and psychological damage. I read those words with my hands shaking. Not with fear. With disbelief. I saved your goddamn life, and this is what I get? I didn't know what to do. I called my parents. Big mistake. Mom was quiet. Then she said, "You should have told us before going public." Like I'd dropped a nuke on the family name. Dad told me lawyers were expensive and maybe I should just apologize. Apologize? I didn't say anything private. I just told the story from my end. My body. My marrow. My pain. Still, part of me wondered. Maybe I crossed a line. Maybe I should have asked him first. But then I started thinking back. Growing up, Daniel and I were like oil and water. Close in age, different in everything else. He was the golden boy. Straight A student, neat handwriting, knew how to charm adults. I was the screw-up. The one who came home with bloody knuckles and missing homework. But I protected him. When the bullies came for him in middle school, I broke a kid's nose for calling him "cancer boy" even before he ever got sick. When he got too drunk at a party in high school, I carried him out the back door, told the cops I was the one who brought the booze. He always looked at me like I was something wild. Something useful when needed. Something to be kept in the corner until it was convenient. I told myself that's what brothers do. They protect. They give. But lately I've been asking, was it always one-sided? After the lawsuit, I dug through old photos, old messages, trying to understand what the hell went wrong. And I saw it, a pattern. He never once thanked me for the transplant. Not once. The praise always came from others, never him. The closest he got was a nod in the hospital, high on morphine. After that, radio silence. I remembered a conversation from when we were kids. I was maybe 13, he was 10. We were fighting over who got the bigger piece of cake. I called him a spoiled brat. He looked me in the eye and said, "At least Mom actually wanted me." I didn't get it then. I do now. Daniel wasn't just resentful, he was keeping score. Always had been. And me saving his life? That tipped the balance too far. Now my lawyer is telling me we could settle. Keep it quiet. Maybe pay him something to walk away. It makes me sick. But I'm stuck with this question. Would I do it again? If I could go back to that Tuesday morning, hear Mom crying over the phone, would I still get on that plane? Would I still lie in that hospital bed, let them drill into my bones, bleed for a man who now wants to destroy me? And the part that haunts me most? Yeah. I think I would. Because that's what you do when you love someone. Even if they don't love you back. Even if, in the end, it was just blood. There's a moment, right before anesthesia takes you, where you're still half awake but your body's already letting go. You're floating, not peacefully, but like something's pulling you under and you can't fight it. That's how it felt walking into the courthouse for the first hearing. I kept thinking about that cold hospital room where they took the marrow from me. Now I was walking into another sterile room, but this time, it wasn't my body on the line. It was the story of what I gave, and whether I had the right to tell it. Daniel sat across the room. Clean-shaven, well-dressed, with that same tight expression he wore at Christmas last year. Like he'd swallowed something bitter and couldn't spit it out. He didn't look at me once. I always thought when someone saved your life, that meant something permanent. A bond, unbreakable. That's what movies teach you. But real life has a way of chewing up the script. This wasn't just about the podcast anymore. That was the match, sure. But the fire? That had been smoldering for years. When we were kids, we shared a room so small you could touch both walls lying down. I had the top bunk. He always wanted it, but I got it because I was older. He used to whisper at night, "Someday I'll be taller than you. Then I'll take it." He never did grow taller. But he got everything else. When I was 15, I brought home a report card with 2 B's and the rest C's. Mom called it disappointing. Daniel brought home an A- once, and they threw a pizza party. I remember sitting there, chewing on cold pepperoni while they toasted his work ethic. He was the good one. I was the one who needed direction. I got my direction eventually. From bottle labels and the back of police cruisers. After the transplant, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would shift. That he'd see me differently. That they would. And for a minute, they did. Family barbecues where everyone clapped me on the back. My aunt calling me our miracle boy. Even Daniel gave a speech at his birthday, thanking a very special someone. But it wasn't me he thanked. Not by name. Just a vague, you know who you are. Guess I didn't. 3 months after the podcast aired, I got a message from a friend. Said Daniel had posted something cryptic on Facebook, some moody quote about betrayal and being used for someone else's redemption arc. Didn't think much of it. Figured he was just brooding. Everyone gets weird online sometimes. But then I got another message. Someone from that same nonprofit, the one who ran the podcast, saying Daniel had contacted them. Angry. Threatening legal action. Demanding they take the episode down. They did. Quietly. Sent me a polite email about respecting privacy. I didn't push back. I didn't want drama. 2 months later, he filed the suit. Sitting in that courtroom, I watched my brother give a statement to the judge. Said he felt violated. Said I capitalized on his trauma. Said I was performing generosity for attention. I felt like I'd stepped into some alternate timeline. A version of our life where he was the victim and I was the villain. And maybe that's how he's always seen it. Maybe saving him just reminded him of every time I beat him at Mario Kart, or took the last cookie, or got away with things he couldn't. Maybe the transplant wasn't grace, maybe it was a debt he didn't want. I don't know. After the hearing, I sat in my truck for almost an hour. Just sitting. Thinking about a night when we were kids. I was maybe 12, he was 9. There was a thunderstorm, and he was afraid of the dark. He came up to my bed and whispered, "Can I stay up here?" I pulled him up without a word. We lay there, silent, while the rain hit the roof like war drums. He fell asleep on my arm. I remember thinking, I'll always protect him. Funny how promises made in bunk beds don't always survive adulthood. The thing is, I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted to matter. Maybe telling my story on that podcast was selfish. Maybe I needed people to see me as something more than the black sheep. Maybe I thought that if I gave enough blood, marrow, pain, someone would finally say, "You're enough." But love doesn't work that way. Not in families like mine. Daniel's lawyer offered a settlement. No apology from his side. Just a cash demand and a signed NDA. I could pay to make it all disappear. They even said it'd help him move on. I stared at that number for a long time. I could afford it. Barely. But it wasn't the money that hurt. It was the message. Shut up. Forget it. Pretend none of it mattered. My own lawyer asked me, "Do you want to fight this? Or just end it?" And I honestly didn't know what to say. Because ending it doesn't end anything. Not the pain. Not the questions. Not the empty bunk bed at 3 a.m. Some nights I still feel the ache in my pelvis where they drilled for marrow. They said the pain fades. It doesn't. Not really. But it's not the worst pain I've known. No, the worst is knowing you gave someone everything, and they still look at you like a threat. Would I do it again? Would I sign up to suffer, to save the same man who's now trying to erase me? I wish the answer was easy. But the truth is, I don't know anymore. Because there's a space between brothers, made of old wounds and unspoken words, and sometimes it's wide enough to swallow you whole. I used to think the worst kind of thief was the one who broke into your home and took your things. Now I know better. The worst kind is the one who smiles like family, calls you brother, and still manages to rob you of your name, your voice, your own damn story. Daniel didn't just sue me. He stripped something out of me that day, and I'm still trying to figure out what it was. It's strange, isn't it, how quickly pride can turn into shame. When I walked out of that hospital after the donation, bruised and limping, I felt like I'd done something that mattered. I didn't need a parade. I didn't want my face on a billboard. But I thought, just maybe, someone in my family might finally see me. I never thought telling the story would be the thing that made them all turn on me. You grow up with people long enough, you think you know where the landmines are. But I stepped on one I didn't know existed, some unspoken rule about staying in your place. About not outshining the golden sun. And Daniel, he's always been that. The favorite. There's this memory I keep coming back to. We were teenagers. Daniel was maybe 16, I was 19. I came home for the weekend, halfway through flunking out of community college, full of beer and bad choices. He was in the backyard, building something out of scrap wood, said it was for a school project. He looked up at me like I was a ghost. I thought you weren't coming, he said. Didn't plan to. Ran out of laundry. He didn't laugh. Just looked back at the crooked little shed he was hammering together. I remember watching him, thinking how different we were. He had structure. Plans. A future. And me? I had a beat-up car and a long list of people I owed apologies to. That weekend, he got an award at school. Something about leadership. Our parents were glowing. I stood in the back, smelling like cigarettes, clapping because that's what you do. On the drive home, Mom said, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Daniel didn't say a word. Just looked out the window, satisfied. Now it's like we've switched places. I have the house. The job. A dog that follows me like I hung the moon. He's the one drowning, and instead of reaching out, he's clawing at me, dragging me down. Is that what this is? Payback for all the times I got to be the mess while he had to hold it together? Or maybe he just can't stand the idea that I became something without his approval. When the nonprofit emailed me, apologizing for the confusion, I asked if they'd gotten more than one complaint. Turns out, they hadn't. It was just Daniel. One angry, polished message, full of legal threats and emotional buzzwords. They folded instantly. All that effort I gave, the marrow, the pain, the time, reduced to a single email. They took the episode down. Scrubbed my words from the internet like they never existed. And still, he wasn't satisfied. The thing people don't tell you about lawsuits is how much they eat. Not just your time and your money, but your peace. Every time I check the mail, there's another letter. Every time the phone rings from an unknown number, my chest tightens. Daniel's lawyer wants a public apology now. They say it's the only way to begin healing. Healing? From what? The story I told didn't shame him. It didn't name him. It didn't accuse anyone of anything. But it did make me visible. And maybe that's the real crime. I haven't spoken to Daniel since the first hearing. But I saw him at our cousin's wedding. He came late, left early. Didn't make eye contact once. His wife, some new girl who looks like she stepped out of a yoga catalog, gave me a polite nod and a look that said, "I know who you are, and I've already picked a side." People buzzed around us like flies. Some ignored me altogether. Others gave me that smile, the one people use when they don't want to pick a fight but think you've done something ugly. Only my Uncle Rick, drunk and slurring, pulled me aside near the bar and said, "Hell of a thing, saving your brother like that. I'd have made him sign a contract first." He laughed. I didn't. It's funny, when I got the call about the match, I didn't think twice. I didn't ask what it would cost, or how long I'd be out of work, or whether he'd thank me. I just said yes. Because somewhere inside, I thought that meant something. That it meant we were still brothers. But the silence that came after, it wasn't just awkward. It was deliberate. He didn't thank me because, in his mind, I owed him. Like I was just patching up old damage. Like the years of being the screw-up meant this was my way of making amends. Saving him wasn't grace, it was debt repayment. And in his mind, I'll always owe more. The worst part? There's a version of this where none of this happened. Where I gave him my marrow, he got better, and we found some kind of peace. Maybe even became actual brothers again. But that version doesn't exist. Maybe it never did. I've been asked why I don't just let it go. Drop the countersuit. Settle. Move on. It's tempting. But if I do that, then I'm saying he's right. That my story isn't mine to tell. That my pain belongs to him. And I can't live like that. Because he didn't just take my marrow. He took my voice. And I want it back. I used to think silence was the noble option. That keeping your mouth shut was the adult thing to do, the kind of restraint that made you strong. Let them say what they want. Let them twist the story. Let it go. But silence has a cost. And I'm the one who's been paying it. After the second hearing, my lawyer told me I should consider mediation. Daniel's legal team was pushing hard for a private agreement, something that would preserve the family bond. I laughed out loud at that, a short, bitter sound I didn't even recognize as mine. What family bond? You don't sue someone you love over a podcast they didn't even name you in. You don't ghost your brother for 6 months after he gives you a part of his body. You don't show up at court in a $1,000 suit and say he traumatized you for sharing his side of the story. The thing about trauma, real trauma, is that it doesn't give you time to prepare. It hits you in the middle of dinner, or a shower, or standing in line at the damn DMV. Suddenly you're back there, on the operating table, hearing the doctor's voice say, "You might feel some pressure." Pressure? No one mentioned the part where it felt like they were scooping your soul out with a hot spoon. I still remember waking up, groggy and gray, unable to stand for more than a minute without getting dizzy. Couldn't laugh. Couldn't sleep on my side. Couldn't even piss without aching like I'd been hit by a truck. And I did it willingly. But apparently, telling people what that felt like was exploiting Daniel's pain. I found myself spiraling after the second filing. Not just from the lawsuit, from everything. From the silence of people I thought had my back. Cousin Tom, who used to crash on my couch after breakups. Man, I'm staying out of it. Aunt Lisa, who cried when I told her I was the donor. Maybe Daniel just needs time to process. Even Mom, her voice tight over the phone, said, "You should have checked with him first. He's been through a lot." I snapped. So have I. Dead silence on the other end. Then the click of her hanging up. That's the cost of silence, right there. You keep your pain inside for long enough, and people stop thinking it's real. They only remember what you say out loud. And for too long, I said nothing. I started recording everything. Not because I planned to air it, I'm not that guy, but because I needed a way to remind myself that I wasn't losing my mind. I talked to my phone like it was a witness. Told it about the transplant. About the way Daniel looked at me the day he came home from the hospital, tired, pale, but smiling, just a little. Told it about the birthday dinner where he didn't say a word to me. About the way he flinched when I hugged him. About the way he disappeared. Told it about waking up at 3 a.m., sweating through the sheets, wondering if I'd made everything worse by saying anything at all. I listened back one night. Just sat there with my headphones on, hearing myself stumble through the words. There was a kind of truth in that. Raw. Ugly. Unfiltered. And it was mine. I think that's what this is really about. Control. Daniel spent his whole life being the good one. The obedient one. The golden boy. And when I, the screw-up, the dropout, the guy who couldn't hold down a job for more than a year, became the hero in the family story? That ruined his narrative. He can't forgive me for that. He doesn't want to. Sometimes I lie awake and wonder if he always hated me a little. Maybe not consciously. Maybe just in the way a shadow resents the sun. He was the favorite, but I was the loud one. The reckless one. The one who left dents in the drywall and made our parents sit through school conferences. But I was also the one who stood between him and Dad's belt that one night he got caught sneaking out. The one who drove him to his first job interview when Mom was too busy. The one who showed up, again and again, even when it was thankless. Would I do it again? God help me, yes. Because I didn't do it for him. Not really. I did it for the kid who slept in the bunk below me. The one who used to whisper jokes when the lights were out. The one who cried the first time he scraped his knee and needed me to tell him it would be okay. That kid? He was worth saving. Even if the man he became forgot how to say thank you. They want me to settle. To sign. To silence myself. I'm not going to. Because what I went through matters. Because the scar on my back didn't come with a mute button. Because silence might keep the peace, but it won't give me peace. And I'm tired of paying the cost. I remember the last time Daniel looked me in the eye. Not in passing. Not through some half-hearted smile at a family event. I mean really looked, saw me, acknowledged me. It was in the hospital, maybe 2 days after the transplant. I was in a wheelchair, pale as a ghost, and he was sitting up in his bed, holding a ginger ale like it was a trophy. You didn't have to do this, he said, voice thin. Yeah, I did, I replied. That was it. No long speech. No tears. Just a moment. He looked at me like a man seeing a sunset for the first time in months, grateful, confused, maybe a little afraid. I think that was the last time he saw me as his brother, not some threat to his identity. Because after that, he never looked at me the same way again. You know what they don't tell you about being the donor? That it makes you disappear. At least it did for me. Once the initial wave of praise passed, it was like I ceased to exist. Daniel got better, and I became an awkward reminder. A symbol of something he needed to survive, and hated himself for needing. He started flinching when people mentioned the transplant. Ignored comments about how brave I had been. Changed the subject whenever I was in the room. The family thought he was just being sensitive. Recovery is hard. Trauma lingers. Give him time. But I wasn't grieving, apparently. I wasn't allowed to need space. I was the strong one. The giver. I'd done my job. Shut up and vanish. At a barbecue 6 months after the procedure, my cousin's kid came up to me, bright-eyed, and said, "You're the guy who saved Uncle Dan, right?" Before I could answer, Daniel appeared out of nowhere, snatched the kid up with a forced laugh and said, "Nah, I saved myself." Then he walked away. Didn't even glance at me. I think part of him hates the idea that he didn't win on his own. Daniel was always the one who pulled himself up, made the right choices, kept things clean. And then there's me, broke half the time, always working jobs that smelled like grease or cardboard, always a step behind. But I was the one who saved him. And I think that broke something in him. I talked to my lawyer last week. She's good, practical, sharp, no time for emotion. She laid out the options again. Settle and move on. Fight and bleed a little longer. Then she asked me something that caught me off guard. What would winning look like for you? I didn't know how to answer. Because this isn't about money. It never was. And I don't think winning means what it used to. Maybe it just means telling the truth, and having someone, anyone, believe it. Maybe it means not backing down when someone tries to erase you from your own story. Maybe it means not letting Daniel, or anyone, decide what my pain is worth. A few nights ago, I found a folder in the back of my closet. Old pictures, letters, some school crap from decades ago. Stuff Mom gave me when she cleaned out the garage. There was one photo, probably from '97. Daniel and I sitting on a curb, knees scraped, arms slung around each other. He's grinning, tooth missing. I'm sunburned, holding a popsicle, and looking like I just got away with murder. That was before the jealousy. Before the parents picked favorites. Before we learned how to keep score. That was when we were just two boys, bleeding the same, bruising the same. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not because I missed it. But because I don't know if he ever did. I still ask myself, more than I should, was there something I did? Did I say something on the podcast that cut deeper than I realized? Did I take something that wasn't mine to share? I go back and listen to the recording sometimes. I talked about fear. About how helpless I felt watching someone I grew up with shrink to half his size. About sitting in the hospital room, counting machines, feeling useless, until the day they told me I was a match. I said, I'd do it again, even if he never thanked me. And maybe that was the line that broke him. Because maybe deep down, Daniel always needed to believe I wanted something from him. That I needed his gratitude. That he was still in control. But I didn't. Not then. Not now. He's still pushing the lawsuit forward. Still demanding silence. Still trying to make me into the villain who stole his pain. But the truth is simpler than that. I never wanted to take anything from him. Just once, I wanted to give. And be seen. You learn to stop waiting, eventually. For the apology. For the phone call. For the moment they show up and say, I was wrong. It doesn't come. And if it does, if by some miracle they find the right words, it's usually too late to matter. Daniel's never going to apologize. I know that now. I think I've always known. But God, for a while, I still hoped. There was a day, about 4 months after the transplant, where I thought maybe we were turning a corner. He sent me a text. First one in weeks. Said he wanted to meet for coffee. I showed up early. Sat there watching the door like a teenager waiting on a date, heart stupidly full of hope. I thought maybe he wanted to clear the air. Maybe he was finally ready to talk. He walked in, nodded once, and sat down like he was at a business meeting. No small talk. No smile. Then he said, I need you to stop telling people. Just like that. I blinked. Telling them what? About the transplant. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Daniel, it happened. It's not a secret. He didn't laugh back. It's private. What part of my spine do you want me to keep private, exactly? His eyes narrowed. This isn't a joke. No, it wasn't. But he still looked at me like I'd done something shameful. Like giving him a part of me had somehow crossed a line. I wanted to say, do you think I wanted this? You think I wanted the scar? The months of aching ribs? The night sweats and insomnia? You think I wanted to sit in that sterile room, watching my own blood get spun in a machine like it was meat? But I didn't say any of that. I just sat there, jaw clenched, and listened as he laid it all out, how people kept bringing it up, how it made him feel like a charity case, how he was trying to move forward and I was keeping him trapped in the past. That's what he called it. The past. As if the thing I gave him didn't still live in his bones. I walked out of that cafe before the drinks even came. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't even pay my tab. I just left. And I haven't seen him in person since. I spent weeks replaying that conversation. Trying to figure out what I did wrong. Where the line was. Why he suddenly acted like I'd violated him. The podcast had aired by then. The nonprofit had sent me a copy of the recording. I listened to it a dozen times, trying to hear what he heard. I didn't say his name. I didn't describe anything that wasn't mine to share. I just talked about fear. Pain. Sacrifice. My story. But I think that's what pissed him off the most. That I made it my story. He wanted to own all of it. The diagnosis. The recovery. The suffering. Even the damn gratitude. And when I didn't make myself small enough in his version, he decided I didn't belong in it at all. It's a hell of a thing, to give someone life and still be written out of the script. I talked to my father last week. He called out of the blue. Said he wanted to clear the air. But really, he just wanted to talk about Daniel. He kept saying things like, he's struggling, and, you know how sensitive he is, and, he never wanted any of this. Never wanted any of this. As if I did. As if I asked to be dragged into a courtroom for telling the truth. As if I wanted the damn spotlight. I asked my father if he remembered who carried Daniel out of the car when he was too weak to walk into the hospital. He didn't answer. I asked if he remembered the time I missed 2 weeks of work because I was too sick to move, and no one called to check on me, because Daniel had just finished chemo and everyone was focused on him. He just sighed and said, "It's not a competition. Isn't it? It always was, in this family. Daniel just learned how to keep score better." The thing that eats at me, the thing I can't shake, is that I think he wants me to regret it. Not just the podcast. The transplant. I think he wants to make it hurt enough that I'd take it back if I could. But I won't give him that. Because I didn't do it for attention. I didn't do it to be praised. I did it because, for one goddamn second, I believed we were still brothers. And that belief, that flicker of love, of loyalty, was real. Even if everything else was a lie. People keep asking if I'm okay. I tell them I am. Most days, it's even true. But some nights, I lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, tracing the scar on my back like it's braille. Like it might spell out a reason. A message. Was it worth it? Would I do it again? Even now, even with the lawsuit, the betrayal, the silence? I still don't know. Because the answer depends on who I think Daniel really is, the boy on the bunk below me, or the man trying to erase me. And maybe I don't want to know. I never wrote them down, not officially. But I've composed hundreds of letters in my head over the past year. Some angry, some begging, some filled with all the things I never had the guts to say out loud. To Daniel. To my parents. Even to myself. None of them ever made it to paper. Because sometimes, writing something down makes it real. And some truths, I wasn't ready to live with yet. Letter number 1, to Daniel. I don't know what I expected after the transplant. Not a parade. Not even a thank you, really. Just, something. A moment. A nod between brothers that said, we've been through something. Instead, I got silence. Then distance. Then lawsuits. I keep wondering what it was that broke us. Was it me speaking up? Or was it the moment I became someone you owed something to, even if I never asked you to pay it back? You hated being vulnerable. Always did. I get that. But this, turning me into the villain, dragging me through court, making me feel like I did something wrong by trying to help you, that's not just self-protection. That's cruelty. And I'm not sure which version of you is real anymore, the boy who cried when I took the blame for breaking Dad's lawnmower, or the man who stared at the floor during our mediation session and pretended not to know me. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Either way, I hope you find whatever peace you think you're buying with this lawsuit. Because it sure as hell won't come from tearing me down. Letter number 2, to Mom. You always said family comes first. But you didn't mean all of us. You meant Daniel. When he screwed up, it was, he's just stressed. When I did? You've always been the difficult one. You never asked how I was feeling after the procedure. Never asked how I was sleeping, or if I was scared. You only asked if I'd be well enough to attend the fundraiser for Daniel's recovery. I showed up, by the way. Bandages under my shirt, sweating through my clothes, smiling while people toasted him. You've always been good at rewriting stories. Erasing the ugly parts. Painting Daniel as the victim, even when he threw the first punch. But I remember it all. I remember the day you asked me, with that same fake sweetness you used when we were kids, to just apologize and move on, for the sake of the family. I remember hanging up on you. And I don't regret it. Letter number 3, to the version of myself that still wants to fix this. Stop. You can't make him see you. You can't earn love that was never freely given. You were always second place in this family. You made peace with that, didn't you? But this, giving him your marrow, your story, your goddamn body, that was you trying to buy something that was never for sale. His respect. His forgiveness. Maybe even his love. You won't get any of those. Not now. Maybe not ever. But that doesn't mean what you did was wrong. It means he couldn't receive it. And that's not your fault. I keep these letters in my head like old voicemail messages. Play them when I can't sleep. Rewind, revise, try to get the tone right. But I've never sent them. Because I know how they'd be received. With silence. With a shrug. With one more reason to call me bitter, dramatic, unstable. And maybe I am bitter. Maybe I'm angrier than I want to admit. But I'm also not going to be the quiet one anymore. Not when it cost me this much to speak. You know what I've noticed? No one, not once, has asked what I lost in all this. Everyone talks about Daniel's trauma. Daniel's privacy. Daniel's healing. No one asks what it's like to be sued by your own brother after giving him a second chance at life. No one talks about the nights I woke up gasping from pain. The medical debt I'm still crawling out of. The friendships that crumbled under the weight of all this family drama. No one asks what it's like to carry a scar that people call a blessing, while the person you gave it for calls it a betrayal. But I live with it. Every day. I don't need an apology anymore. I don't even need him to understand. I just need the truth to be mine again. To say, out loud, without shame, I gave everything I had. And it still wasn't enough. Not for him. Maybe not even for this family. But it was enough for me. They say blood is thicker than water. But that's not the whole phrase. The full thing is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. In other words, the bonds you choose, loyalty, friendship, love freely given, matter more than the ones you're born into. Took me over 30 years to understand that. And it took Daniel suing me to believe it. The day we were born into the same family, we were handed a story, brothers, close in age, sharing a roof, toys, secrets. The world saw us that way. But that version of brotherhood? It only worked one way. He could take. I could give. And somewhere along the line, giving turned into expectation. Not appreciation. Not connection. Just a job. You're the older one. Be responsible. Be quiet. Be generous. When he lashed out, I was told to understand him. When I lashed out, I was told to apologize. Even now, standing in front of a judge, watching my brother lie through his teeth about being publicly humiliated by a story that never even named him, I'm still expected to take the high road. To settle. To be the bigger person. But I'm done with that. Because the high road just leads you back to being alone, sitting in the dark, wondering if you imagined everything. Wondering if he was ever your brother at all. We had another mediation session last month. His side came in all smiles, all polite legalese. We believe this could be resolved amicably. Translation: swallow your story. Pay him off. Play nice for the family photo album. My lawyer asked again, do you want to end this now? I looked across the table at Daniel. He didn't look angry. He looked smug. Like he'd already won. Like the only reason we were here was to negotiate the terms of my surrender. I said no. Let's go to court. Let's put it all on record. Let's make it ugly. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that staying quiet doesn't protect you. It just gives people more room to rewrite what happened. The first time Daniel got sick, we thought it was the flu. Then came the bruises. The night sweats. The blood work. I remember sitting in the hospital hallway, watching our parents talk in low, panicked tones. I'd never seen Dad cry before. That night, He cried like a man who'd already buried his son in his head. I felt helpless. Like a spare part sitting in the waiting room. Then came the call. I was a match. I said yes before they finished the sentence. Because that's what you do, right? You save your brother. Even if you don't like him. Even if he never liked you. Even if there's a quiet voice inside you that wonders, will he ever do the same for me? You push it down. You sign the forms. You go under. But now? Now I wonder what would have happened if I said no. If I'd let the doctors look for a stranger's marrow instead. If I'd stayed in the background. If I'd just been the screw-up again. Would he be alive? Would he be grateful? Would he still be trying to silence me? Hard to say. But here's what I do know. If the roles were reversed, he wouldn't have done it. I know that with a clarity that hurts. And that's the difference between us. I got dinner with an old friend last week. Someone I haven't seen since before the transplant. He asked how I was doing, not the polite version, but the real one. I told him the truth. That I'm tired. Not just of the lawsuit, of carrying the weight of a family that never really carried me. He said something that stuck with me. Blood's just plumbing. Love's a choice. I used to think I was broken for wanting Daniel to see me. Now I think it was just human. But there comes a point when you stop chasing the thing you'll never get. He doesn't see me. Maybe he never did. He sees what he needs to, a threat, an obligation, a story he didn't approve. And I've spent enough of my life trying to fit in a frame that wasn't built for me. We go to court in 2 months. He's banking on me folding. But I've already lost the thing that mattered most, the idea that family would stand by you when it counted. So what else is there to lose? They say the marrow regenerates after a few weeks. That your body bounces back. But mine never felt the same. Still doesn't. Sometimes I wonder if I gave him something I couldn't grow back. Not just marrow. Trust. Hope. That stupid, stubborn belief that love, even fractured love, could survive this. Now I don't need him to be my brother. Not anymore. Because blood might connect us. But it doesn't bind us. The courtroom smelled like lemon polish and tension. Wood floors. Hard benches. Air so still you could hear people blinking. I'd worn a plain shirt, no tie, didn't want to look like I was performing for anyone. Daniel came in crisp, dark suit, flanked by his attorney like he was walking into a job interview. He didn't glance at me. Not once. But I saw the way he squared his shoulders, the way his mouth stayed flat, his jaw tight. He was bracing himself. I should have been the one bracing. My lawyer whispered, "They're going for character first." And they did. His side opened with language like humiliation, emotional exploitation, and psychological distress. They painted Daniel as a man whose darkest chapter had been made public by his own brother, without consent, without care, all for personal gain. They referenced the podcast. A 28-minute conversation where I never said his name, never gave his diagnosis, never even mentioned our last name. But they had the transcript. And they read parts of it aloud. Especially the part where I said, "It cost me more than I thought. And I'd still do it again, even if he never thanked me." His lawyer paused after that line, like she expected it to echo. The judge just nodded. Neutral. My hands clenched under the table. Then came Daniel's testimony. He took the stand like he'd rehearsed it. Calm, steady, soft-spoken. Said the donation was a gift, yes, but one that came with expectations. That I'd made it clear I felt owed. That I publicly weaponized what should have been private. He said, "I never consented to being part of a public story." I looked at him, trying to find even a flicker of the kid I grew up with. Nothing. Just a stranger in a nice suit, calling me a thief. When it was my turn, I wasn't polished. My voice cracked twice. I kept my hands in my lap, just to keep them from shaking. I told the truth. I told them I didn't name him. That I was proud to be a donor. That I didn't speak about his medical records, just my side of it, the pain, the fear, the aftermath. I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for fame. I told my story because it was mine. And because I hoped someone else might hear it and say yes to doing the same for someone else. Then I looked at Daniel. For months after the surgery, he didn't return my texts. Didn't visit. Didn't thank me. I thought maybe he was just coping. Now I understand, he resents that I was part of saving his life. I didn't cry. But I wanted to. Not for the lawsuit. For what it confirmed. That this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was war. We recessed for lunch. I sat outside, legs bouncing, appetite gone. A woman in her 50s approached me. Said she was in the courtroom. Said her husband was a transplant survivor. I just wanted to say. I believe you, she said. Some people don't know how to carry the weight of being saved. I nodded. Couldn't speak. Back in court, my lawyer pulled out character witnesses, people who'd known me for years. Friends who watched me limp into work after the donation. The head of the nonprofit that ran the podcast. Even the podcast host herself. She spoke softly. He never named his brother. He didn't even name the city. He just told a deeply personal story, one we asked him to share, because stories like his save lives. Then she looked at Daniel and said, I'm sorry if that hurt you. But no one owns another person's pain. We all walk through this world carrying our own version. The judge hasn't ruled yet. Could be weeks. Maybe months. Daniel left with his lawyer. Never looked back. I walked out alone. People keep asking what I want out of this. Justice? Closure? Revenge? Truth is, I don't know anymore. Maybe just to be heard. To say, I bled for you. And you turned it into a weapon. To say, I thought we were family. But family doesn't do this. I still remember the sound the drill made when they bored into my bone. A slow, hollow grind. You never forget that sound. Just like I won't forget this. The day I stood in a courtroom across from my brother. And realized the bond was gone. You expect a verdict to feel like a door slamming shut. It didn't. It was quiet. Almost clinical. A few pages read aloud, no drama, no raised voices. The judge ruled in my favor. Dismissed the claim. Said there was no identifiable breach of confidentiality, no malicious intent, and no reasonable expectation of privacy violated. His words were firm, fair. Detached. Then he added something else. I believe this case reflects a deeper conflict not appropriate for this courtroom. What's left of this relationship is not for me to mend. And just like that, it was over. At least, the legal part. Daniel didn't stick around. He left before the judge finished speaking. I watched him walk out. Back straight. No expression. That's when it really hit me. There's no coming back from this. Not even in theory. People think winning feels good. They're wrong. It feels hollow. Like standing in the ruins of a house you built with your own hands. Sure, the fire's out, but everything inside is gone. What's left are the ashes. The outline of what once stood. I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. Cars honking, people chatting on the sidewalk, the world completely indifferent to what had just happened. My body felt light. My chest felt heavy. That's grief, I think. When the fight ends, and there's no one left to be angry at. I didn't go to the family dinner that weekend. Mom sent a message. It would mean a lot if you came. I stared at it for a long time. Never answered. I already knew how it would go. Daniel would be there, quiet and smug. They'd all act like nothing happened. Like their son hadn't just tried to erase me from the family photo. I stayed home. Grilled a steak. Drank a cold beer. Let the dog sit in my lap and watch reruns on mute. Didn't feel like victory. But it didn't feel like losing either. A week later, a package arrived. No return address. Just my name, typed out, no handwriting. Inside was the photo. The one I remembered, us as kids, sitting on the curb, arms slung over each other, two boys in scraped knees and sunburned grins. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, for what it's worth. That's all it said. Not an apology. Not a reconciliation. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it in a drawer and haven't opened it since. So, what's left? Honestly? Not much. But maybe that's okay. I've stopped trying to fix what broke. Stop trying to rewrite the story so it ends with a hug or some Hollywood redemption arc. Life's messier than that. People are messier. Sometimes, you give more than you should. Sometimes, it still wasn't enough. And sometimes, the person you bleed for leaves you bleeding. Would I do it again? I've asked myself that every day since the verdict. And here's the hard, honest answer, yes. Even now. Even knowing how it ends. Because saving someone isn't about what they give you in return. It's about who you choose to be in the moment. And in that moment, I was a brother. Not perfect. Not noble. But willing. That's enough for me. They say the body regenerates bone marrow quickly. But the soul? That takes longer. Still healing. Still here. Still telling my story. Because if blood doesn't bind us, maybe truth does. And this, every word, every scar, is mine.